So yeah, we didn't manage to make it to the statue down at Bulverhythe with Edith Swanneck. Anyhow, we're sitting here in a car in North London, outside a murder house, and this is a murder house that belonged to my great uncle, who was sheltering my great grandmother in 1931. And maybe 3-4 years ago, we have walked this house into existence. The reason I introduce it like that is because we also walked the whole Edith Walks project into existence.
Yeah, I was just thinking the whole topographic stretch of it is like that we scavenge the horizontal in order to reach those points where it becomes vertical and you drop down through the layers of time. And we were on this site which has got a very powerful feel, even though there's a sort of banality and mundane of suburbia, pincered in by the two big motorway systems, like a tidal surge. And here we are with shadows on the pavement of this event, which is very painful. It's part of family history, but it's a trauma of this man who'd suffered in colonial wars and comes back, and it ends up with this single act when he's attempting to cut off his wife's head in a form of passion, and finishing up in Broadmoor. I mean, in that kind of asylum where you're out of the world but you're still alive, so you are a kind of ghost, essentially, transmitting and waiting for all of these years for somebody to make something more of this story than just a sensational episode that plays in the newspapers for a couple of days. And we don't go into what's behind that. It's never about one person. It's about a whole culture and everything that we as a nation were doing and everyone in the world was doing. So that connects with Edith in the sense that by putting up this mortuary statue, which is rather tender, of the woman who was King Harold's mistress, cradling the dead man, and the face eaten away by the syphilis of time, put on a bowling green in Bulverhythe, somehow that becomes a hub and a focus and a machine that allows you back into the human side of the past. It's not just a political battle. It's about a couple of individuals who become symbolic of man and woman and their relations, the difficulty of the relations, the deaths, the murders. And all of these things are brought out by the process of walking.
I think one of the things about working together on the Edith Walks project with Edith Swanneck is, and it's one of the phrases that you coined many times, is this idea of us being receptive, and we become almost flesh radios to their presence, to their having been. And that's something that we were trying very hard to do with the project, and Iain does consistently with his writing. And this is it's been a great inspiration for me.
But also, that statue is very like your process, which is your filmmaking process and others. Are all about acts of collaging. You showed me before we got into this car the sweater you're wearing, which was what you were wearing when you were hit on your motorbike on the Old Kent Road and sliced into pieces, almost like Harold. And your wife has been able to stitch this together again. So it's a resurrection and a rebirth of this marine scene, which is amazing. And that's just what's happened with this statue, because after the Battle of Hastings, King Harold was sliced into pieces, and Edith was the only person who could recognise his private parts and arrange to put him together again. And after that's gone over, in history, all kinds of different aspects and places in England claim to have his body or parts of his body. He becomes like a religious icon, like one of the catacomb saints. You know, some of him is in Chester, some of him is in Waltham Abbey, and so on. And the only place where you can hold it all together is this moment with Edith in her cradling, and him holding this phallic axe that he can no longer use, a dead man. I mean, it's amazing.
So maybe connecting with that, and to conclude, is the dead weight. Perhaps this is what Edith and King Harold were doing on that foreshore, just down very close to where we both spent a lot of our lives, waiting for the syphilis of time to remind us that we should come and resurrect them, dig into their backstory like archaeologists. So I will offer up a collagic version of both this conversation and snippets from the film. When
you'll have Edith, you'll have Claudia as Edith, because this is like a kind of hand wife, a ghost wife, who carries on walking through the shore, sometimes carrying a whalebone box, whatever, a link between many projects, because the whalebone box was my battery for so many years before we took it back up to right up to Steve Dilworth, the sculptor,
on the Isle of Harris.
on the Isle of Harris. Yeah.
And that should conclude it nicely. Thank you, Iain, for sharing those words with us. Over.
His body I have found. I kiss without a tear or word his dead face upon the ground. I press my lips into his bloody wounds that gape upon his breast. I kiss his brow, I kiss his mouth, and hold him